The sounds of gunfire piercing the night in Nuevo Laredo. Gang members paralyzing traffic with spike strips. Charred tractor trailers lining the highway.
Is the United States federal government going to control our southern border, or are we going to let the Mexican drug cartels do it?
If you've been following us here on this channel, then you know that Mexico has long been plagued by the brutal ongoing conflict between its government and the many drug cartels that have been operating on its territory.
Mexican drug cartels are not shy about making their presence known along the southern border to the point where they are turning everyday border towns into all-out war zones.
But one man's audacious plan threatens to change the game forever. Imagine this: a covert operation, elite U.S. Special Forces, and a mission to take down...
We got a space squad, so we might as well have a cartel squad. I got a horrible Donald Trump impression.
...the most powerful drug lords across the border. And this isn't a scene from a Hollywood blockbuster. This is the controversial proposal put forth by none other than U.S. former President Donald Trump.
Donnie got plans. Well, we can't have a war with Mexico.
War with Mexico.
No, it's a war on cartels.
He said, no, it's a war on the cartels. But what drives such drastic measures?
How could these cartels carry on their operations, virtually unbothered, bringing about chaos on both sides of the U.S. Mexico border? From the indiscriminate violence that leaves communities in terror to the intricate networks of corruption that shield these organizations, let's do a deep dive into the heart of this issue. It all started with Trump's controversial interview with Megyn Kelly. In typical Trump fashion, the interview can only be described as a total roller coaster that left many viewers wondering what he might say next. The interview opened up with a discussion about Dr. Anthony Fauci, the face of the White House coronavirus task force during the pandemic. Kelly brought up the fact that Fauci received a very controversial presidential commendation while Trump was in office, expecting Trump to provide a clear stance. He pretended to be ignorant instead.
I don't know who gave him the commendation. I really don't know who gave him the commendation.
This bizarre response was a classic Trump move, a mix of evasion and strategic confusion. This wasn't the only unusual moment in the interview. Kelly continued by mentioning Florida Governor Ron DeSantis and his response to the pandemic, and Trump's reaction was just as ambiguous as the rest. He accused DeSantis, whom he mockingly called Ron DeSanctimonious, of shutting down Florida and following Fauci's advice too closely.
I think he's a rapper. Ron DeSanctimonious.
If you look at Ron DeSanctimonious, this guy said the greatest things. I can give you articles that Fauci's great.
As the interview went on, it became apparent how Trump managed to stay at the top of the tricky political game for as long as he has. You see, Trump has been known to use this seemingly erratic approach in order to create a spectacle.
Yeah, man, he creates chaos in the conversation. He'll turn your shit around, man. Y'all give him more credit than he deserves, bro. He ain't no different than any hustler I've ever seen in the street. He no different than any con man or confidence man that I've seen in the street. No different, not even a little bit.
That people want to see, which brings us to the topic we're going to be exploring today. In this same interview, Trump went on to talk about his next audacious proposal. He boasted about wanting to send so-called kill squads to Mexico to combat drug cartels.
You also said recently that if you're reelected, you would send special forces and, quote, other military assets to Mexico to stop the drug cartels.
Mexico's petrified of the cartels. The cartels are running Mexico.
And so
right there, he just punked the Mexican government. Or did he mean the people? When I say Mexico's petrified of the cartels, I'm saying the people. He's punking the government right there. Oh, Mexico petrified of the cartels. There were no parts of that problem.
The stage was set for this one out-of-the-box idea, using military force to crack down on Mexican drugs.
It's like, man, we send the same dudes that went and got Bin Laden. We send them there to get Bin whoever we want. You know what I'm saying? That's what he's on. He's like, we got these teams of ninjas. Why not use
drug cartels? Trump's interview with Megyn Kelly wasn't just about revisiting Trump's past presidential decisions. It was also a prelude of sorts for his future plans to address the Mexican cartel's growing influence and, even more so, the current fentanyl crisis that's devastating communities in the United States. Fentanyl crisis in the United States has reached catastrophic levels, reshaping both public health policies and political agendas. Overdose deaths have skyrocketed, and fentanyl is at the center of this tragic epidemic.
The overdoses, drug seizures, and concerns continue to grow from coast to coast.
It is a disturbing trend we've seen. Fentanyl deaths have skyrocketed in recent years, and 2 years ago this week, 3 people in New York City died from an overdose of the drug.
Fentanyl's pathway to the U.S. involves a complex and dangerous supply chain. The primary production happens in clandestine labs in Mexico, using precursor chemicals, often sourced from China.
That was gonna be the game right there. Weren't the twins entertaining a couple of Chinese guys when they got snatched up? Didn't the Chinos get snatched up with them? Or were those no, those were the pseudo guys. Probably the same team.
These labs operate under the control of powerful and ruthless Mexican drug cartels. Once produced, fentanyl is smuggled into the United States through various methods, exploiting weaknesses in border security.
Hiding drugs inside these gas tanks so that the customs people have to cut it open with a blowtorch.
The scale of the fentanyl crisis has forced it to the forefront of national discussions. It's not just the number of deaths that is alarming, but the demographics affected. Fentanyl has swept through both urban and rural areas, affecting individuals from all walks of life. The highly addictive nature of the drug means that once it takes hold in a community, it spreads rapidly, leading to a cycle of addiction.
Like what? Like crack? Like everything else that you put in the black and brown community from day one and you play dumb about? Don't sing this America shit to me. You know what I'm saying? America been blowing up its own neighborhood since the beginning. Fuck out of here.
And fatal overdoses. Several major cartels are involved in the fentanyl trade, including the infamous Sinaloa Cartel and the Jalisco New Generation Cartel. These organizations are incredibly well organized, with extensive networks that reach into every corner of the United States. One infamous incident that brought this crisis to the public eye was the brutal slaying of 9 U.S. citizens by the Sinaloa Cartel.
The 3 SUVs were leaving a small town in northern Mexico. Some were heading to a nearby wedding, others were heading over to the U.S. when authorities say cartel opened fire on the 3 cars.
This incredibly shocking act only highlights the cartel's reach and thirst for violence.
What was that? Was that sending a little message? Who's sending the message like that where you gun up all these kids and shit?
Enraging the American public and prompting calls for drastic action. It is within this context of widespread fear and outrage that Trump's proposal to use kill squads found its main supporters. While drastic, the idea to deploy U.S. Special Forces to target these cartels represents a desire to directly confront the source of this epidemic. Trump's rhetoric framed the cartels not just as criminal organizations, but as a national security threat comparable to terrorist groups. This comparison was no accident. It was a calculated move to justify the use of extreme measures typically reserved for international terror cells. The MO of these cartels is just as sophisticated as it is brutal. They employ a mix of violence, corruption, and strategic alliances to maintain their drug trafficking operations. Cartel-controlled areas in Mexico are flat-out war zones with daily battles for territory and power. So, what's being done to solve this? Well, efforts to combat the fentanyl crisis have included increased border security, enhanced surveillance, and cooperation with Mexican authorities. Sadly, these measures have had limited success. The sheer scale of cartel operations, coupled with their ability to rapidly adapt to any obstacle that gets thrown their way, has rendered many traditional law enforcement strategies ineffective. This has led to a growing sense of frustration and a demand for more aggressive action.
U.S. authorities discovered a drug tunnel between San Diego and Tijuana. The tunnel, the length of 6 football fields and 6 stories below ground, has rail tracks, ventilation, and electricity.
Trump's proposal for kill squads was born out of this whole frustration. The idea of sending special operations forces to dismantle the cartel's leadership structure is intended to cripple their operations and hopefully slow down the flow of fentanyl into the United States.
Trumpito wants to destroy, right here, that's his campaign, just like the eye patch guy. We're going to go after the cartels. But you're going to get him out, but who's going to go in there? Because what do you think, everybody just going to stop doing drugs? You're not going to fix your American drug problem. Now you're going to have a bunch of people out here snorting Ajax and bleach. You know what I'm saying? Like, what you going to do? You're going to replace them. They're cutting out the middleman. We no longer need your services. If the U.S. goes and blows up the Little Debbie factory, best believe they're going to build another one that they control, and where you're still going to get your Little Debbie snacks. They're not going away. All right? America's a fat, greedy pig. She's not going to just allow, what, they're going to build rehabs? Mental health facilities for people? The U.S. laughs in the face of that arrogance. Never. Like Casigo said, USA like drugs, cartel like money and gun. Cacico. USA like drugs, cartel likes money, gun, and blood, and power. All of them. USA like the power too, but to say that the cartel like the gun and the money, they like the blood and the power. That's what they like.
United States. This plan is not without its fair share of critics and risks, but more on that later. For now, let's take a look at how these cartels are pushing back against the very forces that were designed to undermine their power. In order to fully grasp the magnitude of Trump's proposal to use kill squads, you must first understand the complex nature of the Mexican drug cartels and their operations. It goes without saying that these organizations are not just some petty criminal gangs. They're some of the most highly structured, militarized entities in Mexico, and their extensive networks and deep...
Something new from Casper is here. Hint, it's mattresses. With innovative feel, support,
rooted influence go far beyond their home country. At the top of the hierarchy sit the leaders, or kingpins, who oversee vast criminal enterprises involving drug production, trafficking, and money laundering. Notable cartels include the Sinaloa Cartel, formerly led by the infamous Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, and the CJNG, under the leadership of Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, also known as El Mencho. These figures are not only powerful, but also extremely elusive, often evading capture or escaping prison with the help of their intricate networks. And that's not all. The structure of cartels is more similar to that of a corporation. At the top, you have the CEOs, the kingpins, followed by upper management, think lieutenants and regional leaders, and then middle management, the plaza bosses, who control specific territories. This hierarchy ensures that operations run smoothly, even when disruptions occur. For example, if a kingpin is captured or killed, another leader quickly steps in to maintain order in such a manner that you wouldn't even be able to tell that they faced any disruption. Cartels operate through a combination of legitimate businesses as well as illegal activities. This blend allows them to launder money effectively while maintaining a guise of legitimacy. And the real kicker in all of this? Well, one of the key strategies cartels use to maintain their operations is corruption. They infiltrate various levels of government, police, and even the military, ensuring they have allies who can protect them or inform them of law enforcement actions.
Mexico's former top cop is behind bars. The attention turns to the man who got away, a case that further proves corruption can rise all the way to the top.
This corruption makes it incredibly difficult to dismantle their operations from the inside, as there are always insiders working to keep the cartel's interests protected. Cartel violence is not limited to battling rival groups. It extends to just about anyone who stands in their way, including journalists, politicians, and civilians. This violence is a means of maintaining power and instilling fear, ensuring that communities either comply with their demands or face dire consequences. Trump's idea to use kill squads essentially targets the upper echelon of cartel leadership, the kingpins, and their top lieutenants.
All right, so what happens? I'm about to tell you what happens. Somebody got to take it over, right? It's a vacuum, a power vacuum. Same shit, Chicago. You take the bosses off the streets. Now you got to deal with all of the dudes that was at the bottom just catching the bodies for you. Now those guys are the bosses by default. They done skipped 12 steps. They skipped 12 steps because you took down the first 3 tiers up there and they stepped up 12 steps. Now you got a monster. Now what you gonna do?
Behind this strategy is to strike the strongest link in the cartel chain, therefore disrupting their operations and instilling fear among the remaining members. This approach has precedence in the counterterrorism operations conducted by U.S. forces in the Middle East, where targeted strikes have taken out high-value terrorist leaders. However, cartels, unlike decentralized terrorist cells, have a hierarchical and resilient structure that allows them to quickly adapt to the loss of its leaders. The removal of one kingpin often leads to violent power struggles as subordinates fight for control, which can escalate violence rather than diminish it. New leaders are always ready and more than willing to step in, sometimes leading to even more aggressive and brutal enforcement of cartel operations. The thing is, they collaborate with criminal organizations in other countries too, therefore extending their influence and operational capabilities. The global nature of these cartels makes them some of the trickiest adversaries one can have, as they are not confined to a single geographical area.
Since 1990, Border Patrol agents have discovered at least 230 cross-border tunnels running from Mexico into California and Arizona.
Come over to this side, do work, bounce. Just like that, they were gone.
So while Trump's idea might sound like a brave solution. The reality is that cartels are deeply involved in literally any aspect of Mexico's society, and every decision made to stop them has to be carefully thought through. But whatever decision that might be, it also needs to happen fast, because cartel operations are gaining traction at an unprecedented pace, and this can only mean even more trouble going forward. Let's face it, the human toll of cartel violence and corruption is staggering, impacting millions of lives in both Mexico and the United States. And understanding the
And let's just say one day that the cartels were to turn around and come at the USA. Oh, you know how many disappointed riders there would be in the USA. Nah, I'm not gonna fight my jefecito, my role model, my boss, my king. All the riders will cry. Oh no, they'll go over there and they'll join the other side, because they're riders like that. Yo voy con mi héroe. Shut your bitch ass.
Devastating impact it has on human lives is key to putting the urgency behind drastic measures like Trump's kill squads in context. The only constant presence in cartel-controlled areas is violence. People like you and me who are so scared that they even try to illegally cross the U.S. Mexican border because the risk of getting captured by U.S. Border Patrol officers is a far better fate than what they have to deal with in their own homes down in Mexico.
This makeshift encampment behind me can be a lifeline for migrants crossing this treacherous terrain here along the Arizona border.
Daniel made the 5,000-kilometer trip with his 2 young cousins to escape gang violence and poverty back home.
Towns become battlegrounds as cartels fight for control over the territories that suit their terrifying agendas. One of the most heinous practices of cartels is the public display of their violence. Beatings, hangings, and mass killings are used as psychological warfare to instill fear in anyone who might oppose them. The slaying of journalists and activists is also extremely common, as cartels seek to silence those who might expose their activities the most.
But how much more fucking exposed you think you can be? Ain't nobody bringing up nothing new. Y'all been running roughshod across the whole fucking Mexico and Western United States and United States as long as you want. Expose you for what? You out there with it. You want everybody to see it. You TikToking it. Fuck are we talking about here? I'm gonna murk you because you're exposing my secrets that I'm telling everybody on TikTok. The fuck?
Suppression of free speech and political activism creates a culture of fear, making it difficult for the truth to travel freely. It's no wonder that, for many young men in these areas, joining a cartel can seem like the only reasonable economic option.
They are young men just like me. We look normal, but we're sick in the head.
That's a fact.
I see myself as a good guy, but if you mess with me...
Why are you a good guy? If you mess with me, I'll F you up and I'll unalive you, right? What if I don't mess with you? You're going to do it anyway, right? Because you love power and blood and money. Just to feel like you the guy, right? That's what you do it for.
The impact on American communities has been devastating, and tens of thousands of lives have been lost to overdose. And to make matters even worse, this ongoing crisis has stretched across all demographics. Communities in the U.S. are not just dealing with the loss of life, but also the broader social impacts that addiction has. Families are torn apart, healthcare systems are overwhelmed, and the criminal justice system is burdened with the fallout from increasing drug-related crimes.
I just think people need to be aware that, your child doesn't have to be a, drug user in order for this to, take their life. They can literally try it once. And from what I understand, my daughter didn't even consume an entire pill, and she's no longer here. And
that lady got to tell that story to help somebody else and to make sure somebody else knows. Kid in your family goes and explores and tries something new, and boom, that's it.
Does this make Trump's plan of sending kill squads more reasonable? You can be the judge of that. No matter how you spin it, the consequences of sending such a squad across the border have the potential to outweigh the benefits by a long shot, and things can get pretty dark.
Yeah, what he don't understand is all it takes is one of those missions to go bad. One of those guys right there in them uniforms to get smeared across something over there, and it's a public relations nightmare, and all kind of shit is going down.
The essence of Trump's plan involves sending elite U.S. Special Forces into Mexico with the mission of targeting high-ranking cartel leaders. We already know that this concept is not entirely unheard of. After all, the U.S. has conducted similar operations against terrorist organizations across the globe in the past. And, other than directly tackling the kingpins of these cartels, one of the other key objectives of the kill squads would be to target the laboratories.
If we do not focus on these cartels. Get ready.
These labs, often located in remote and heavily guarded areas, are crucial to the cartel's operations. By destroying these facilities, the aim is to disrupt the supply chain of fentanyl before it can ever reach the U.S., thereby reducing the availability of this incredibly destructive drug on American streets. I'm sure you're aware of just how complex the narco paper trails can get. Well, the kill squads would not only target individuals, but also the infrastructure that facilitates the cartel's money laundering activities. By choking off their financial resources, the cartel's ability to sustain their operations would be severely hampered. And don't get me wrong, this all sounds like a pretty solid plan, but there are plenty of challenges standing in the way. The first and most significant hurdle is the issue of overstepping Mexico's authority. After all,
and like 298 said, Mexico gonna be like, Papas, we got a problem, we'll fix it ourselves. We don't need your help. We'll call you when we need your help.
Invading a sovereign nation or conducting military operations on its soil without its government's consent is a blatant violation of international law. And, of course, Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has taken a strong stance against any form of foreign military intervention.
Es un irrespetuoso. Nosotros somos un país independiente, libre, soberano. No somos colonia. No somos protectorado de ningún país extranjero.
AKA, watch your fucking mouth.
And that's without even mentioning the logistics of carrying out targeted strikes in cartel-dominated areas. This is where things get even more complicated. These regions aren't just up for grabs. Quite the contrary. They're heavily guarded with sophisticated surveillance and defense systems. What do cartels care about the most? It's their assets. So, obviously, they're going to do whatever is necessary to guard them. And guard them they do. Cartels employ a mix of human intelligence, bribery, and technology to protect their operations, making any incursion highly risky, to say the least.
This is modern warfare. We use war technologies. We use drones. Here, everybody is adequately trained to use them to the maximum.
Special forces would need precise, actionable intelligence and endless support if they want to even come close to them. And let's not forget about the potential for collateral damage. Cartel leaders often operate in densely populated areas, and locales might end up paying the ultimate price just for being in the wrong place at the worst possible time.
There's no security here, no peace, no tranquility. There's only fear. Crying and fear, extortion and intimidation.
Any attempt to take out these leaders runs the risk of causing grave civilian casualties, which could provoke widespread outrage and further destabilize the region. And so, the ethical implications of such actions are significant and shouldn't be ignored. Now, does this mean that stepping in and removing a brutal kingpin, if the opportunity arises, is somehow a bad thing?
My thing is what is it gonna do? What is it gonna accomplish?
But without international cooperation, this plan seems doomed right from the start. But what's the alternative here? Surely something can be done. Most policymakers argue for alternative approaches that might be more effective in the long run. Remember when I said that cartels are basically huge corporations? Can a business thrive without its customers? Increased access to addiction treatment and recovery.
But at what point is this whole criminal situation a snake eating its own tail? Everybody get everybody. You pull a heist with somebody, everybody but one of them gets smoked because one of them got all of them smoked. It's like, what are we doing?
Recovery services might just be the way forward here. After all, it's been proven time and time again that providing support and resources to individuals struggling with addiction can significantly reduce the demand for such substances. And to add to that, investing in...
Now, does any country invest in the rehabilitation of their people, in the mental health of their people? All I've seen over the last 20 years is more mental health facilities closed, newer and more powerful drugs to kill people.
In public education and preventive measures is also essential. Community-oriented programs that educate people about the risks of drug use and the availability of support groups can play a significant role in preventing addiction in the first place. Addressing the socioeconomic factors that contribute to drug addiction is another vital component. Economic disparities...
So what's the biggest problems? The biggest problems be what? Addiction and poverty. Fix those two things, you fix everything. You put a dent in that problem, man, you save a lot of lives, you create a lot of future. But that's not what our governments, plural, are here for. They're here to burn it down. This is an insurance job on the planet Earth.
Lack of employment opportunities and inadequate access to healthcare and education can drive individuals towards drug use. By investing in social programs that address these root causes, communities can become more resilient and less vulnerable.
What they're gonna do? These guys are gonna come with their hammers and force everybody to get lit. It's time for you to get high, buddy.
The influence of
They
drug
already do that to you in the hospital. I've seen many a doctor make many an addict in my lifetime.
cartels. Moving on to what's out of your control or mine, and that is, of course, strengthening international cooperation. Governments everywhere need to work closely with Mexican authorities to dismantle drug production. What does that mean exactly? Well, a lot of things. Enhanced intelligence sharing, joint operations, and capacity building initiatives can all improve the effectiveness of law enforcement efforts on both sides of the border, not just the U.S. After all, why stop at just one border and not try to make a difference in the places that probably need it even more?
It don't matter what you do. Somebody else ready to take over. The shit don't stop.